This is Judith from the Shepreth Hedgehog Hospital, which is obviously a fairly local charity to us, and she'll tell you more about it, obviously, but this is Judith.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for inviting me. So yes, I'm going to start off by just talking to you a little bit about the Hedgehog Hospital as a building and what we do. It's on the borders of the Wildlife Park. We're a charity, the Wildlife Park is a business. The hospital is the brown shed that opened in November 2012 after a significant amount of fundraising and the formulation of the charity SWCC, Shepreth Wildlife Conservation Charity, is our official charity name, but we're familiarly known as the Hedgehog Hospital. And it costs about £4,500 a month to run. We're completely reliant on charitable donations. And in the first 10 years, we've admitted over about 5,000 hedgehogs. So it's about 500 a year. And we're very, very proud of our survival rate. It's one of the highest in the country at about approximately 60%, particularly proud of that for what we call neonates, that's newborn hedgehogs, very, very small hedgehogs. We're open 365 days a year. The hedgehogs don't know about Christmas or Easter Monday. And we have a huge network of volunteers, and I'm a volunteer. I've been there volunteering now since I retired about 10 years ago. And we also have a paid manager on duty every day. That's our only salaried staff. We have to have salaried staff as managers because they'll be ordering prescription medication, they'll be using syringes, injecting hedgehogs. You cannot do that really just reliant on volunteers. So we have one member of staff every day from about 8:30 till 5 on what we call triage as a paid member of staff. So the Hedgehog Hospital, what do we do? Well, we take in any hedgehog that looks to be in trouble. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is why hedgehogs might be in trouble, and it's helpful for you, I think, to know a little bit about hedgehogs in general. Their main food source is earthworms. That's just fine. Out there now, that's great because it's sopping wet. But imagine forwards to July, August, when we've not had any rain for 3 or 4 weeks. We've had 30-degree temperatures for a week. The ground is parched. Their food source is deep, deep underground. So they then resort to eating slugs and snails, which if you're gardeners, you will know slugs and snails are omnipresent. They never disappear. They're always there, chewing on something in your garden. So that's a hedgehog's last resort. And slugs and snails contain lungworm and roundworm, which kills hedgehogs. So we've got a little bit of climate change thread going through here. Our long hot summers that we're now starting to get due to climate change is having an impact on our hedgehogs and other wildlife, of course. They should be hibernating between November and February. But if you'd like to think back, when did winter actually start? When did it stop? When did spring actually start? The temperatures are all over the place. We get really warm nights in February. So the hedgehogs come out of hibernation, and then 3 or 4 days later, we drop to a frost. It's not great. They can't survive that. So they're struggling for many, many reasons. But the single factor is what we are doing to the environment and causing the climate to wobble about a bit. They should be sleeping during the day. Now, this is the really important bit. If you switch off after the last thing I say now, hedgehogs should not be out in the day. Out in the day is not okay. They are very sick and they need to come to us. I'll cover that a little bit more in a minute. So let's look at the end of the story. This hedgehog, there's me, my arms there. This hedgehog's been in hospital. It would have been brought in to us because it was found out during the day. It would have been in trouble, spotted, brought to the hospital, and it's going back to its own garden. Now that's quite important. We really, really try and get as many hedgehogs back to their own environment as possible. Because let's face it, if you're in Addenbrooke's, you're released from Addenbrooke's and you're taken to Glasgow, you wouldn't know where you are. And it's the same with wild animals. They have especially adults, have a cognitive map of where they were before they went into hospital. So there's an adult hedgehog there going back to a garden in Thriplow. It's round when it curls up. It's got lots of fur on its tummy. It's quite chubby, obviously, because we've been feeding it in hospital. It's been eating well, it's bright-eyed and it's alert. Okay, fix that in your mind and have a look at those three. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Something wrong with all of them. This is what we get through the door. Any thoughts on the top left?
No fur.
No fur, that's right, it's got ringworm. So that hedgehog will have been found out during the day, brought to us, and immediately from just a visual examination, we can see it's got ringworm. Ringworm is actually a fungus on the skin, tends to be activated when the hedgehog is stressed, short of food, or because the hedgehog's got gut parasites on the inside. So quick physical examination, we know there's something wrong with it, and we will pursue that with examination of endoparasites, in gut parasites. And that is treated by fungicidal baths. We have to make up a formula, plonk the hedgehog in the bath, and it paddles around, and the ringworm is killed. What about the one in the middle? It's all kind of...
It's not very round.
It's not very round, no. It's a bit difficult, that one. It was brought to us from a paintball site in Bassingbourn, and it decided to investigate the camouflage netting and has got itself completely wound up and tied up. So that one, we have to get straight down to the vets for an anaesthetic because we can't get this netting off. So it's anaesthetised, it goes all floppy, and then the netting is cut off, and you check for any ligatures or cuts in the skin. And we'd obviously check it was okay before we put it back out again. It's likely to be very dehydrated if it's been stuck like that for more than 24 hours. And then the final one, is it round? It's sausage shaped, isn't it? That one is starving. It's all head, and if it wasn't for the spines, and if you could see down to the skin, you would see the spinal column and the ribs. But the spines tend to cover it up. That one is absolutely on the edge of starvation. So those are the sorts of patients we get brought in by the general public. And as I said, quickly, you can see immediately what's wrong, but we always do further investigation. We spend a huge amount of our time looking at samples of poo, fecal smears that go under the microscope, because we've got some extremely expert people at the hospital who can look at a slide, a smear of hedgehog poo, and diagnose straight away what is wrong on the inside, in the gut. So the one that was starving, for example, probably had a huge burden of lungworm or roundworm. That's what we see down the microscope, eggs and worms. And these conditions are easily treated if we catch them early enough. And that is why hedgehogs will be out during the day. They've got so much gut activity with parasites, lungworm, roundworm, or intestinal fluke. They lose the plot, if you like. They're not out there in the daytime because they choose to be. They don't know what they're doing. They're feeling so sort of bunged up inside, it affects their behaviour. So that's why we say hedgehog out in the day is not okay. It might look just fine, but this is what's going on the inside. So we're able to diagnose, we have prescription medication for all of these treatments, and we can, it's either injected medication or it's a spot on where you put it on their skin. Another issue, which is sadly quite common with some of the hedgehogs that we have brought in, are strimmer injuries. I know we like to keep our gardens tidy. I know it's important that certain bits of the countryside are trimmed, verges to keep traffic view, but it's not great for hedgehogs. So here we've got one who has had a very, very lucky escape. The entire forehead and spines have gone. And he came into us looking quite a mess. Happily, he was treated. He didn't lose any of his eyes. His nose was okay. Nose damage can't be fixed. So he was treated and went back out into the wild. Strimmer injuries are difficult because the blade of the strimmer is filthy. So immediately you've got a filthy wound. So you have to give antibiotics. That wound was in a flat position, but hedgehogs can curl. So if it's on their back, you can't do anything like stitching because the stitches will burst. There's antibiotic gel that can be put on, but essentially the wounds are very, very difficult to treat. If hedgehogs have lost a limb, a leg, I'm afraid it's put to sleep. We cannot put disabled animals that are badly injured back out into the wild. It's just not ethical, it's not legal. So our vet makes a sensible decision along with what we think about can we treat this animal or not. And sometimes if the animal isn't found quickly enough, infection will have set in, you've got fly strike, you've got maggots, it can't be helped. So the message is, please be careful if you're strimming anywhere, and if you know people who are gardeners, gardening businesses, point out to them. Just kick the grass. Make sure there's nothing in the long grass before you trim that particular place. So, our hedgehogs come into the hospital, we patch them up, we sort them out, we treat them. They're with us for up to 8 weeks sometimes, possibly more if it's a serious injury or a serious condition. We feed them on jelly-based dog or cat food, and they have kitten biscuits to keep their teeth healthy. And obviously they have water to drink. We don't feed specialist hedgehog food as routine, but if it's donated, of course, that's lovely. We don't feed them on gravy-based dog food because that gives them diarrhea. And the last thing you want is a load of hedgehogs with diarrhea. They're obviously cleaned out every single day, and that gravy food isn't suitable. So that's what it looks like in the hospital. They live in large boxes, a bed of newspaper, scrunched up newspaper. We make nice little newspaper dens for them in these large boxes, and they get their treatment. And as soon as possible, we get them back outside. Now, we're approaching the busiest time of the year at the hospital, spring through to late autumn, November. And that's because hedgehogs start to breed. They come out of hibernation about now, and they will mate, and a first litter will be born to the females. Hedgehogs have 2 litters. So let's look at this picture. It was quite cute, doesn't it? You've got a female hedgehog trotting along with a baby in her mouth. But think what I've said. What do you think's not so good about this?
Daytime.
It's daytime. It's daytime, right. And why is she moving the baby? So we've got to think carefully about this. That is a female moving a baby because the nest has been disturbed. So here's that human activity again, messing things up for hedgehogs. Maybe somebody's decided to have some new decking. Hedgehogs nesting underneath. New shed. Tidy up the compost heap. Tidy that corner of the garden where it's really messy. Hedgehogs had babies. In this instance, she's decided to move them, but that's not always the case. She could abandon them, or she might even eat them. So, again, human activity and hedgehogs is not particularly positive. I mentioned that hedgehogs had 2 litters. The summer litter is born around May, June, depending on when the hedgehogs came out of hibernation. The second litter we call autumn juveniles, and the hospital just fills up with these because when the second litter is born, maybe late August or even September, could be later than that, could be October, depending on the weather, that litter is heading into the winter, and the mortality rate for that second litter is about 80 to 90%. And these autumn juveniles are the ones that people tend to find quite frequently wandering about, looking for food in the colder months, end of October, going into November, not knowing what they're doing, because they are left by their mother at 6 weeks. The mother parents them for just 6 weeks. And then you've got these tiny little hedgehogs, and the hospital, we just get them coming in. You can take in 6, 10 a day. So we can soon fill up. They're very cute at that stage, but let's remember they're wild animals. They will bite your finger off. They really will. They've got teeth like razors. Hedgehogs come in all the time, obviously, and any female that comes in from now onwards, we would potentially think is pregnant. So we frequently get females who've got trouble. They've been out during the day because they've got a high burden of parasites, but they're also pregnant. So we do get hedgehogs born at the hospital. These hedgehogs here are only hours old. There's 6 of them. The mum's got her foot on one, right down the back. And they're all looking for where the food is. And in a minute, she's going to roll over and get it all sorted out. There she goes. She's not squashing them. This family wouldn't stay in the hospital. The hospital is only open until about 6 in the evening, 5 or 6 in the evening. And anything that needs help overnight has to go off site. So we've got a marvellous network of volunteers who would take that hedgehog family, they'd go in a very large rabbit hutch, and mum would be fed and left to care for the babies herself. And that has a happy ending. That had a happy ending. The mother raised the babies, and then she went back to the hedgehog hospital for treatment. The babies were allowed to fatten up, and everybody got released. If we get orphaned hedgehogs, remember the hedgehog trotting along the patio with the one in its mouth? Well, if she'd left the nest, the orphaned babies would just be there. So we frequently get babies, hedgehogs, hoglets, brought into the hospital either singly or as a whole group, and they're without their mother. Now, this is tricky. This is really tricky. They require almost 24-hour care. I think I could probably cross out almost. They do require 24-hour care. The first thing we put in is a rehydration mix because we've no idea what's in their gut. They're usually dehydrated anyway because their mother's not been around. And so we want to flush them through. Because dehydration in any animal is quite serious. And then we spend a lot of time rubbing their little bottoms with a ball of cotton wool with some Johnson's baby oil on it. If the hedgehogs are in the wild, their mother would lick their bottoms and would cause the material in the gut to pass through. She would keep the gut active. If we don't activate the gut by rubbing their little bottoms, then they're going to basically get a massive dose of constipation. So we can't feed them unless we're getting fecal material and urine out the other end. So we have to do this.
So even volunteering has its limits then.
Indeed. And these guys have to come home. They can't stay at the hospital because they're going to need feeding every 2 to 3 hours. So this is a scene in my utility room. This is Broccoli, he was found in the middle of Gilbert Road. How did a baby hedgehog weighing 35 grams get into the middle of Gilbert Road? We don't know. So here's Broccoli. He's on a heat pad there, and that's a 1 ml syringe. And there he is, sucking away. His eyes aren't open. He's no teeth. His ears aren't really formed. His skin's still quite translucent. The white spines are the ones he was born with. They erupt. As soon as the hedgehog's out of the birth canal, white spines erupt. So he's sucking on milk, which is formula milk. It's puppy formula, puppy milk. Obviously, you know not to feed cow's milk, because that's got lactose in it. So there he is. And that happens about once every 3 hours. At 30 grams, he's going to need constant feeding. And of course, he's also going to need the constant toileting. So I've got to keep his gut going. Imagine if you've got 5 of those. It's quite time consuming. Next stage for Broccoli is a real milestone when they are able to lap for themselves. So that's a jam jar lid. And he's beginning to lap, but you'll notice he's got some rather nasty scarring down the side of his body. Some flaky skin. That feeding is not efficient enough for him to be independent overnight. I can't leave him overnight. He can't stay at the hospital. He still has to be fed by syringe, because that's just still a bit hit and miss. So he's still not got any teeth, but he's growing up. And then finally, around about three weeks, hedgehogs get some of their teeth, and we can let them be more independent. We can put food in their box and they can eat independently. And again, that's just one on its own. You can imagine 5 is pretty messy. But you can see the damage now that rolling in the road did. We worked out that it was probably some sort of chemical burn. It rolled in oil or diesel or something like that. So that was treated with some cream. The mess is unbelievable if you've got more. I mean, it's messy with one, but the mess is unbelievable if you've got a litter of 5, an abandoned litter of 5. And Broccoli went on to make a full recovery, and he was actually released at Woburn Abbey, St Mark's, which is a super site. Because of course you've got to be, you have to leave your car in the car park. It's a really good site. So, last slide. Why are we doing all this? Why have we got a specialist hedgehog hospital? Hedgehogs were voted the UK's favourite animal a couple of years ago, and they're in serious decline. I think we probably all know that now. So we've got a graph here of the data from 2 surveys done in 2022. The next one it comes out every 2 years. The next one is due out. And you can see both lines have got a deep dip at around about 2005. Then we've got some plateauing, and now we've got an uptick. This is the British Trust for Ornithology's Great Big Garden Bird Watch. They include mammals now. And then we've got the People's Trust for Endangered Species. There's very few hedgehogs out in the real countryside. They are faring better, it seems, living in close proximity to humans in our gardens. So that's a very quick sort of sum up of what we do and why we do it. So thank you for listening to that very quick snapshot. I hope that sort of informed you a little bit more about what Shepreth Hedgehog Hospital does and why. Our main aim is conservation of a species and education. So I'm doing the education now. Not only do we need, obviously, charitable donations, but we need the word spreading. So from my point of view, I do all the adult talks, and my colleague does outreach in school. That's free. We offer free educational outreach in schools. I tend to charge for the talks that I do. If any of you know of any clubs or societies like gardening clubs, WI, in your area, then I would offer to do a talk. And it is about spreading the word. And if you know of schools where you think the children would benefit from that, local schools, again, if you email SWCC, then we'll put you in touch with my colleague who does outreach in school. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Every day.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you.